Today was day 4 in Donna Adelson's trial, and we continued with the testimony of Sergeant Corbett. Now, Sergeant Corbett already started his testimony yesterday at the end of day 3 and continued today. And he has a lot to share because he looked at the extractions, the Celebrate report of all of these phones that were involved: Donna Adelson, Charlie Adelson, Katie McBanoa, etc. So he had to sift through all the reporting, all the reports on the phones and the location data to be able to figure out what was important and what's relevant for this case. So this is really the most important part. This is what came out. One thing that Sarah Dugan wanted to establish, because it seems to be a point of contention, whether Donna Adelson, what she knew about the divorce file and whether she knew about this relocation motion being denied. So the first thing she brought out is showing an email where it was very clear that Donna Adelson actually did know on June 25th, 2013, that she knew about the relocation motion being denied and how upset that made her. Okay, so that was number one. Number two is he was there to also establish the communication patterns between the people. Remember, this is like a train. So you have only certain cars, certain people interacting with other people. So you have, right, Donna Adelson talking to Charlie, Charlie talking to Katie, Katie talking to Sigfredo Garcia, Sigfredo Garcia talking to Luis Rivera sometimes. So you always see this pattern, and he shows what happens around certain events, how these patterns play out. And it's always the same consistent pattern that looks like there's some sort of conspiracy here, and each person is intentionally only talking to the person in front of them. Okay, so he keeps showing that throughout the testimony, which is why it gets a little tedious, but it's an important part. So he showed that that's what happened in June. Now remember, there was 2 attempts on Dan Markel's life. The first one was June, and so first thing you have to show is the communication pattern in June. And also another part that he has to show is the fact that Charlie, for some reason, believes that landlines are safer to talk on in terms of intercepting these phone calls. He believes that a landline is better to talk on. So you see occasionally, now most of his communications with Donna Adelson are on a cell phone, and same thing with Harvey Adelson. Most people talk to each other with cell phones, but for a very small amount of phone calls, for some reason, he decided to only speak to Donna on a landline. And in fact, Charlie says specifically, you see that he's saying, call you back on a landline. Why is he saying that if he has nothing to hide? So it seems like he's trying to hide something, and he thinks for some reason that speaking on a landline is more safe and secure. Okay, so we're talking about now the first time, the June attempt on Dan Markel. This is when Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia traveled together in June, and they didn't end up doing the job. So what happened was that after Charlie spoke to Katie McBanoa, which Katie McBanoa dropped off Sigfredo Garcia to rent the car. So the first time, actually, Sigfredo Garcia was the one who rented the car. Katie McBanoa dropped him off. Then Katie calls Charlie, and Charlie, after that, calls the landline of the Adelsons for 25 minutes and has a conversation. Most likely something about, okay, this is the plan is taking action. Katie just dropped off Sigfredo Garcia. Sigfredo Garcia is going to go and rent the car and take with Luis Rivera. What should you do tomorrow? Where should you be? You know, I guess that's the suggestion by the prosecution what that conversation was. Okay, then remember also another part that you keep finding with the prosecution is that they keep coming back to this, and I think people are a little confused why they do this. Well, the reason why they're doing this is because they also want to show that Luis Rivera is believable, because they want the jury to believe Luis Rivera, because he just testified and said that this is all one big conspiracy, right? He's a cooperating co-defendant here. So they keep pointing out different points where Luis Rivera said something and it turned out to be true. So for example, Luis Rivera said that the first time that this car was rented in June, first of all, the cops never even knew about that until he offered that information, which turned out to be true. And the fact that who was signed on the rental agreement the first time was Sigfredo Garcia. And the second time was actually Luis Rivera. So the first time, Sigfredo Garcia was the one who rented the car in June. And this is also confirmed with cell phone data. He showed this on the location data, on cell phone data. But the problem was that he was actually issued a traffic ticket. He got a citation. So he had to go then turn in the car because he can't have on record that he's renting this car and then he does this murder. So he can't have that on record. So they actually, Sigfredo Garcia returned the vehicle and got a new vehicle instead. Okay. Then you find on June 4th, the location data shows Sigfredo Garcia and Luis Rivera traveling from Miami to Tallahassee. And then on June 6th, returning to Miami. So that's another thing that Corbett showed with all this data. And again, you find the same patterns of communications around these dates, which show that people are either waiting for action or planning action. Then on June 7th, okay, so let's keep this in mind. The first attempt was in the beginning of June. They rented the car. They brought it down June 4th. They brought it back June 6th. And then June 7th is when Donna Adelson, we saw this text yesterday, where Donna Adelson sends Charlie a text when she's in the car and says, I can't talk to you right now because I'm in the car, so I'm going to wait for the next stop. And then she says, erase this text message. So when did that happen? The erase my text message happened June 7th. So they had to have some sort of important phone call on June 7th, maybe because the plans didn't work out on June 6th or June 4th or June 5th, when that first attempt on Dan Markel was supposed to take place. Then they were talking with this text. Remember that right after this text, that's when Charlie said, I'm still working on Dad's birthday present. And again, the prosecution believes that that's code. They're talking about the birthday present, meaning this murder of Dan Markel. So that is what happens right after June 7th, saying that Charlie's still working on it. Okay. Then we had the party on July 5th, 2014. And already in July 5th, 2014, something that the prosecution pointed out with Corbin on the stand was the fact that in this Evite, the boys that are listed, these are Dan Markel's kids, and he's still alive. And the boys are listed with their last names as Adelson, even though Dan was still alive. Okay. Then we get to this next very important piece of evidence. And especially if you're somebody who's looking to see if any of this evidence points to Wendy's being involved somehow in this conspiracy, well, this is another piece of evidence that would suggest that Wendi maybe knew more than she's leading on. Okay, so let's play this part for you. And this has to do with whether Wendi is confirming Dan's location for July 14th through the 18th. Remember, he was murdered on the 18th. So listen to this. Watch this.
So this is slide 142. There's a text message from Wendi Adelson to Dan Markel asking if he is in Tallahassee for the dates of July 14th through the 18th.
And she says she wants to know because she wants to know if she can have the kids on the 16th.
Correct.
Now, remember, this sounds like, okay, very simple text. Like, hey, these are two people that are divorced and they're trying to figure out the kids. And she's saying, wait a second, are you going to be in town, Tallahassee? I get the kids on the 16th. Or she's asking, can I have the kids on the 16th? And he says, sure, no problem. So it looks very innocent, but as we're going to hear more, there could be more behind this text message.
And he replies, yes, you can.
Correct.
So chronologically, this would have occurred after the trip to Tallahassee in June by the killers, but before the July trip to Tallahassee when Dan Markel was actually murdered.
Correct.
So those that text message exchange happened after the June attempt and before, obviously, the July attempt.
Now, the dates that Wendi Adelson is asking Dan Markel about, what is significant about those dates? What happened on July 15th?
Those dates encompass the rental car and the trip to Tallahassee and ultimately Mr. Markel's death.
Okay. So July 15th was the day that the killers rented the car to come to Tallahassee.
Correct.
And then they were in Tallahassee from the 16th through the 18th.
Correct.
With Dan Markel being killed on the 18th.
Correct.
And where was Wendi Adelson when she sent this message?
So,
oh, thank you. Let me ask you about this. Was there already a schedule in place as to who would have the kids during those dates that Wendi Adelson asked Dan Markel about?
All right. So remember that text seems like it's very innocent, saying, "Hey, can I have the kids then?" But actually, there was a schedule already in place. These are very, very scheduled people. Everybody and the Adelsons, they knew exactly when everything's supposed to happen. So listen to this back and forth.
Yes, there was. So this is an email from Wendi Adelson's Gmail account referencing the schedule for the children for this particular time. And we can see in the email that Mr. Markel is listed to have the children the 11th through the 17th.
And the date she was asking about is the 16th?
Correct.
And in the top of that email, does it say that she gets the kids every Wednesday anyway?
That she has the children every Wednesday anyway?
Yeah, on the last sentence, I imagine you'll have the chance to have them on Wednesday nights during the weeks in May, June, and July?
Yes, that she would imagine to have the chance.
Okay. So what she was asking about seems to already be established in this schedule that was already established in January, 7 months earlier?
Correct.
So there was that email that she already knew about the schedule in January, and she sent an email about it, and then she gets the kids on Wednesday. Now for some reason, the court camera didn't show this email, but it does show that she's going to get the kids on the 16th. So everything was already planned. So, and that text message looks like, hey, can I have the kids on the 16th? Like, did she do that every Wednesday? Like every Wednesday night, did she ask him, do I get the kids? Doesn't seem that way.
All right. So
So why specifically this date did she feel that she needs to confirm that she can have the kids, or, strike up conversation about, are you going to be in town? Make sure things like that.
where was Wendi Adelson when she sent the message to find out whether Dan Markel would be in town that week?
So that message was sent the morning of the 6th, and the closest cell site or event we have a location. She's communicating with a cell site in South Miami, Miami Beach, that would be consistent with the continuum.
And the continuum was the residence of Harvey and Donna Adelson at the time?
That's correct.
So where exactly was Wendi when she found out that Dan Markel is going to be in Tallahassee for those dates, including July 18th? Well, that was in that text. And where was she? She was with Donna Adelson. That's what the location data shows, that it's consistent that she was with Donna Adelson. So that's how Donna would know Dan Markel's schedule, that he's going to be in town for those dates when the murder happened. And again, just putting all of the pieces together, how Donna could have known about his schedule and then told Luis Rivera. Right? Luis Rivera said that he knew that he was going to be leaving the next day. Dan Markel was going to be out of town the next day, but he knew he was going to be in town through the 18th. Well, how did he know that? Who told him that? Well, now we're seeing how Donna could have told him that. Okay. Then another part that she brings out, Sarah Dugan, is that on July 7th, Wendi puts in her calendar that she should cancel the cable. So cancel cable and instead get Apple ID or Netflix instead. So that's what she puts in her calendar July 7th. Now, why is she doing this on July 7th? Is it just because she decided July 7th, it's not worth it to have cable anymore. I should get Netflix or Apple ID instead. I can stream anywhere where I want, because normally cable locks you down to one location. Was this just a coincidence that she did July 7th, or was she actually having some plans about, I'm not going to need cable at that house if I'm not going to be living there. So maybe I should just get rid of the cable. And that's, again, how the prosecution would probably want you to believe, and why some people think that Wendi perhaps was part of this. Now, there is an email that she showed from July 11th, and this is a Donna email regarding the repairing of the TV, July 18th in the morning. This is a week before. And then we have the July 14th night before the car rental. So this is the second attempt, right? So we had the June attempt, then we had the July attempt, which is, shouldn't call it an attempt, the July murder. And they rented the car. They rented the car July 14th. And before that, they had a conversation, Charlie Adelson, the conversation with Katie McManua, and then Katie McManua contacts Sigfredo Garcia. Now, that time, Luis Rivera was the one who rented the car. And then after the car is rented, that evening, Charlie Adelson talks to Katie McManua. And then what does she do? He calls the Adelson landline. Okay. Now, let's see what's significant about this. Who knows, number one, what they spoke about? Obviously, this is what part of the defense brought out. You don't even know what they're actually talking about. This was before the tap, so you don't know what they were actually talking about. But before the wiretap. But what you do see is that there was, for some reason, after July 14th, that night, a time when Charlie Adelson calls the landline, even though he generally does not call the landline, only for very special occasions like this. He starts calling landlines when he thinks he needs to speak securely. And who does he speak to? Here's the question. Who does he speak to? Does he speaking to Harvey? Maybe Donna has nothing to do with this. And that is what they're going to show right here, which is actually very cool. So how they figured this out. Let's see if we can get there. It's hard to see the actual. Okay, give us one moment. Get there in just 1 second. Okay.
Or so after this car is running, and after he talks to McManua.
So we can see that starting at 7:30, Charlie Adelson calls the Adelson residence, the Donna and Harvey Adelson residence, for a 22-minute phone call, and then again at 7:54 p.m. for an 11-minute phone call.
Okay, so 22 minutes and then 11 minutes. Charlie
Yes.
Adelson calls the landline that night.
Correct.
do the phone records show us which parent he may have been talking to on the landline at that time?
We know that there is a phone call from Harvey Adelson's cell phone to the residence later on. So he would have not been at the residence later on in the evening. At this time, there's no indication.
Can you walk us through that?
I can. So this is 8:06 p.m. We see the call from Harvey Adelson to the Adelson residence, about a 12-minute phone call.
Okay, and that was
So Harvey calls the Adelson landline. So Harvey's cell phone calls the Adelson landline and speaks to somebody for 12 minutes. Now, some people can suggest, well, sometimes when you're in the house, maybe you have a big house and your wife's not answering her cell phone and you need something, so you call the landline and maybe she'll answer the phone. Does that make sense? You're going to speak for 12 minutes then? Like, that's a 12-minute conversation when you are in the house with your wife and you're calling the landline so that she can answer and you're talking for 12 minutes. So, I guess it's a possibility, but here, what they're basically laying out is that if Harvey called at 8:06 and then they lasted for 12 minutes, well, let's see when Charlie called the landline.
would have been, is that about the last phone call from Charlie Adelson to the Adelson residence was at 7:54 p.m.
Correct.
and they talked for 11 minutes?
Correct.
Okay. So at that point, it's going to be about, is that 8:05 when they get off the phone?
Approximately, yes.
Okay. And then who calls the Adelson residence at 8:06?
Harvey Adelson.
Okay. So it was 1 minute later that he called the Adelson residence.
Correct.
So would that be consistent with Charlie Adelson talking to Donna Adelson at the residence, since Harvey Adelson wouldn't be calling himself at the Adelson residence 1 minute later?
Could be, yes.
Right. So who do you think he was talking to? I mean, Charlie called at 7:54. It lasted 11 minutes till 8:05. And then Harvey calls at 8:06. So, yeah, I mean, all reasonable inferences say that Charlie Adelson was actually talking to Donna Adelson. And that conversation happened right after the rental car, where Charlie just got off the phone with Katie McManua right before, where Katie McManua was in touch with Secretary Garcia and Luis Rivera when they rented that car. Okay, so then they traveled to Tallahassee July 17th, as we know, and then this is again another point where Sarah Dugan pointed out that they didn't know, that law enforcement did not even know that there was a prior trip until Luis Rivera told them about it. So this is again showing that Luis Rivera is believable when he testifies and when he tells certain facts about this case. Then he also shows again the pattern of communications on between July 16th and July 18th when the murder was done, when they were traveling to Tallahassee. So again, showing the whole circle of communications, which would again also suggest that there's a conspiracy going on over here. Also interesting is that there was a calendar entry for Wendi Adelson to fix the TV on July 18th, which was deleted. So she deleted that entry to fix the TV on July 18th. Okay, now the question is, when did she actually put it in? When did she put in that entry and when did she delete it? But she definitely deleted it before her phone was downloaded and taken to Celebrate, and her phone was downloaded July 18th. So at some point, you would think after the event happens, then you can delete it. Then it would make sense that at some point after this event, July 18th, before she was picked up by the police, she deleted that calendar entry for some reason. Okay. July 18th also at 8:20 in the morning. So now we're talking a couple hours before Dan Markel's murder. On July 18th at 8:20 a.m., Wendi Adelson texts Charlie Adelson, "This is so sweet." And then she also deleted that text message. Then you hear a voicemail, just chronologically what happened that morning. Then you hear a voicemail to Wendi Adelson from Dan Markel at around 9:04 a.m. He just leaves a message about what his schedule is that morning. They're talking, they had to discuss something about the kids. So they had to have some discussion and they weren't able to connect. And he leaves this message that he's going to be at the gym between 9:15 and 10:30. Now, Luis Rivera did say that they already were tailing him from before that. So it wasn't like he left that message and then Wendi Adelson heard he's going to be at the gym and then relayed that message somehow. And then that's how they were able to follow him. They already had his information before that. Now, what was going on that morning is that there was some bickering going on between Wendi Adelson and Dan Markel about picking up the kids. Wendi was pushing him about picking up the kids at a certain time. Right? She said, I want to pick up the kids at whatever it was, 3 o'clock. And he said, no, you don't get the kids till whatever it is, 4:35. And so they're bickering a little bit about this back and forth. And then what happens is that Wendi Adelson gets a call from Charlie Adelson. This is at 9:19 a.m. So just about an hour or whatever, a little bit before the murder. And the call lasts for over 18 minutes. 18 minutes and 17 seconds to be exact. Somehow there's this phone conversation, and then right after that conversation, she texts back Dan Markel, no problem, no argument, no bickering, whatever you say, I'll pick up the kids at 4:30. So again, what is going on? Why all of a sudden did she decide to stop bickering? Just because, she decided to be the bigger person, just coincidentally, right around then, right after she got off the phone with Charlie Adelson? Or did Charlie maybe tell her something about what was going to happen that day? And then she's like, well, I don't have to fight about this anymore. Who knows? All right. Well, so then you have Charlie Adelson talking to Katie McBanoa at 9:58 a.m. for about 7 minutes. Then Charlie Adelson calls Wendi Adelson at 10:06 for 11 seconds. So another phone call to Wendi Adelson for 11 seconds at 10:06 a.m. Then Charlie Adelson back to Katie McBanoa, calls her at 10:09 for 6 minutes. And then, as we know, the next thing that happened was the murder of Dan Markel. And then you have Wendy's trip, which officially she doesn't know anything about this murder. She knows nothing, right? No one's told her anything yet. She's just getting her TV repaired. But she has to go buy bullet bourbon. She has to buy some bullet bourbon for a stock the bar party. And this is also where there's some really crazy actions, unexplainable actions that Wendi takes. Perhaps. Now, some people would say, well, it is explainable because people have erratic driving behaviors. Don't trust this person with directions. They'll just take the long route every single time. But this is what happens. And then, you can decide for yourself what was going on here. So take a look and we'll show you. This is 135. Okay. So if you take a look at the screen here, this is Wendy's house by the yellow flag. And she's driving down to ABC Liquors. As you can see, going all the way down the purple line. I'm sorry if you're on the podcast, you can't see this, but she's taking this long route to ABC Liquors. Now, if that's the only liquor store in town, all right, no problem. Okay, that makes sense. You gotta get there somehow. Now, there is a more direct way, right? You can go down this highway here, as I can't even see what highway it is over there, and then come straight down here. But okay, she decides to go this way, for whatever reason. Maybe it's not too much out of the way. Maybe she feels it's more direct. Whatever. Okay, so that's a little bit explainable if this is the only liquor town in liquor store in town. But also what's interesting is that when she gets to Trescott, which is you see this little purple line that's jutting out from this other kind of straight purple line, that's Trescott. So she decides, instead of continuing down this road, which would lead her straight to ABC Liquors, she decides to cut through Trescott for some odd reason. Now, she can't cut through Trescott because what do you know? Trescott was blocked off by a police. And as we heard from Officer Brandon, was it 2 days ago, there was a very deliberate turnaround, almost like Wendi knew what was going on there. But, okay, so this also, I think, is not the craziest proof that she is actually knows what's going on, because she decided to cut through Trescott. It's not a shortcut, but she's coming down here. I don't know. Maybe she has some feelings about, driving down my old block and seeing my old house. People would do that, right? That's understandable, perhaps, right? So, okay, I don't think that's the craziest explanation. She just wanted to pass by the house where her children might be. Maybe she'll see them outside on the lawn. I don't know, or just have nostalgic feelings of driving down the house, down the old block, right? Okay, people can understand that. But where it gets a little bit more interesting is where you actually see that she was heading, after this picking up the liquor, she was actually heading to lunch with one of her friends. I think it was called Mosaic. And let's see where she ends up, because then that's where things really kind of come off the rails here. So this is 137. Give me 1 second till we get there. Okay, so take a look at this.
And then on to lunch.
Correct.
Are you familiar with the area of Thomasville Road and I-10 where the restaurant Mosaic used to be, which was the restaurant she went to lunch at that day?
I am.
Were there any liquor stores in that area back in July 2014?
There were, yes.
Okay, can you walk? Thank you.
So what we see, slide 237, again, we are showing the residence, her residence at the time on Awkward Ridge, and her ultimate destination, which was Mosaic off of Thomasville Road. So clearly the next slide here shows, as calculated by the mapping software, the most direct routes between those two locations as far as where she was heading.
So you see where Mosaic is, it's like right next to her house. I mean, it's really, really close next to her house. And that's where she was going for lunch. Now let's see if are there any liquor stores that are between her house and where she's going for lunch? Maybe ABC Liquors all the way down near Truscott is the only liquor store.
And then were there any liquor stores in the area of Mosaic at that time?
There were. So at that time, there was Public
You see Public Liquor is right there. It's right next to Mosaic.
Liquors on Thomasville Road there, very close to Mosaic. There was Market Square Liquors off Thomasville, and also another ABC location a little further north on Thomasville Road.
So there's also an ABC Liquor. So maybe she likes ABC Liquor for some reason. Maybe that's the store that she likes. Well, there's also one right there, also near Mosaic, closer to Mosaic than going all the way down to where Truscott is.
Would those Publix and Market Square Liquors be a lot closer to Aqua Ridge and Mosaic than the one she ultimately went to?
They would. And this is slide 242, which shows the route she ended up taking versus what is calculated as the most efficient route. We can see there's a difference of about 9 minutes longer to go the other way.
So she went 9 minutes out of the way to go to the ABC Liquors next to Dan Markel's home.
Correct.
All right.
And so here's a great illustration, if you can see this. So you got the purple is what she actually did. So she went all the way down here, passed through Truscott, or tried to, went to ABC Liquors down here, and then shot up all the way here to Mosaic instead of just going down over here, right here to Mosaic. And there's some liquor stores right over here. There's Market Square Liquor over here, Public Liquor over here, and then I think a little bit more north is another ABC Liquor. So she went 9 minutes out of her way. And this is where people start to say, come on. People don't drive 9 minutes out of the way to pass by their old house to get nostalgic feelings. Like this is way out of the way. And it's not like she doesn't live near there where she gets to go there all the time also. So this is where people start to feel, okay, Wendi knew something. And if she knew something, maybe she was also involved. And when you hear about those text messages with Jeffrey Lacasse, then it also starts to make you feel that, hey, is she trying to set up a fall man? And if she's actively participating in the conspiracy, well, now you have a much more serious charge. Because remember, it's not just about knowledge. That doesn't automatically make you part of a conspiracy. Okay, well, this is why it starts to feel somewhat suspect. Okay, now another point that the prosecutor brought out is the fact that when Wendi turned down Truscott and she saw that it was blocked off, what do you think she would do? Well, hey, my kids live right there. My ex lives right there. That's where my kids are staying right now. Is everything okay? Is everybody okay? And I think at some point in one of the other trials, she testified, well, maybe a tree was down or something. But a very careful mother may start being nervous about their kids. But she didn't call anywhere about the kids. Didn't call the school. Didn't call 911. Didn't call Dan Markel. Hey, are the kids okay? Nothing. As if like there's nothing to be nervous about at all. Okay. Then again, they show after this, after the murder was done, he showed the locations of the phones back to Miami. And then July 18th, we know that there's a meetup between Katie McManus and Charlie Adelson about there's a meetup. They have to pick up the money, right? There's some money that needs to get picked up. Now, what's again an interesting part is that at 7:08, Wendi Adelson calls Donna Adelson to break the news to her from the police station. 7:08 p.m. Right? That's when she's picked up. So she gave her an interview and then she has to call him up. That's what she tells her, sit down. I have to tell you something very sad. Put it on speaker, even though dad's in the shower or whatever. Okay. So that's when she calls Donna to tell her what happens. And what's the immediately next thing that Donna does? She texts Charlie Adelson, call us ASAP. Right after that phone call from Wendi Adelson to Donna. Then Donna goes and passes by Charlie's house. And this is where she texts him when she's outside of his house, outside your house, which would seem to suggest that she's right outside her house, right outside Charlie's house. And Charlie texts back 10 minutes. And he texts back 10 minutes at 9:19. Now we're going to see why this is significant in just one moment. So let me pull it up there, and you'll see why this becomes very interesting. Because here you have the actual, if you can see this on the screen, you have the actual travel time from where Donna was going, all the way in the bottom of the screen, to the top. So her phone registers at 10:53 p.m. all the way up there. And before that, at 8:35, was all the way down here. And at somewhere around 8:59, that's when she texts Charlie Adelson outside your house. Now, according to location and the average time traveled, that's exactly what would make sense for her. If she left where her location was before at 8:35, it would make sense that she's around Charlie Adelson's house at 8:59 when she texted outside your house. But here's where it gets a little bit crazy. The actual travel time, if she was going straight, the estimated travel time would have been, and he actually did this travel himself, but the actual estimated travel time would have been taken about an hour and 4 minutes. Instead, it took Donna Adelson 2 hours and 21 minutes to travel from the bottom of the screen to the top. A trip that should have taken an hour and 4 minutes, somehow it got extended to another hour and 10 minutes. And remember, Katie McManus said that she testified that when she got to Charlie's house, what did Charlie tell her? My parents just left. Okay, so all these pieces of evidence together suggest that Donna Adelson and Harvey stopped off, and whether Harvey knew about it or not, we don't know, but somebody there knew about it. They stopped off by Charlie's house, and remember about the damp money, very possibly that's when there was more discussions, there's more talking, and the money was exchanged. Okay, so that was really the extent of the testimony from Sergeant Corbett. And there was a little bit of cross-examination, but nothing too earth-shattering, like we kind of spoke out that we don't know exactly what was spoken about on the phone calls. This was before the wiretap, so we don't really know what they were talking about. It's just the pattern of all these events when people are starting to get on the phone and talk. And also, there could be traffic at 10 o'clock at night driving up that highway. It could have been traffic. Maybe there was an accident. Maybe there was some other reason why it took her an hour to travel that way. And maybe we should just discredit and discount Katie McManus' testimony, and also the fact that she texted outside your house. Maybe that was on the way to the highway flying by, and she didn't really stop off by Charlie Adelson's house. Okay, well, then the next person who testified was the bump officer, the undercover officer. And his job was to pretend he was a gang member. And he said that the problem here was that it was 2 years after the murder, and obviously Donna Adelson is not talking about the murder anymore, right? They're done. That happened 2 years ago. So how are they going to get these people to start talking about Dan Markel's murder? Well, this is when they employed a tactic, a strategic tactic, which they spent a lot of time thinking what to call this tactic. And they came up with the very sinister term of tickle the wire. I'm serious. That's what they called it, tickle the wire. So they had to tickle the wire. They had to get people to start talking about this murder. So that's when they introduced the bump. And he recorded what happened. He recorded interaction. The undercover person met Donna Adelson. We all know about it. He gave her some papers and wrote a phone number and said, "You're not taking care of my." Luis Rivera was already arrested at that point. "You're not taking care of there's Toto and Tatu, whatever." So they're not taking care of Luis Rivera. You're taking care of Katie McManus. You have to take care of my brother, and call this number $5,000. And that's essentially what the conversation was. And that's it. So, okay. And that was it. So the cross-examination really wasn't too crazy. Said that, well, where was she going at that time? She was going to pick up her grandchildren. Okay. So fine. She didn't end up paying the $5,000, right? She didn't end up actually paying, and neither did Charlie. Nobody paid the $5,000 extortion, if we should call it that. So nobody paid it. And he also didn't sound so nice when he sent a text message to her. And he said, of course, you have to sound like a gang member sometimes, even though initially he was respectful. But when he sent her the text message that she didn't pay him. So, of course, as a gang member, you have to sound a little tough. And he did. Okay, so that was essentially what happened. And then later, Donna Adelson actually called him and said, that number was called a number of times. Of course, the police weren't called, but she did call the number. And she said that, I'm sorry, you have the wrong person. You have the wrong person. Maybe you should go to the police. Okay. Anyway, fine. So then we had another special agents from the FBI who were involved in the surveillance of everything that happened after the bump. So they just had to kind of lay the foundation to get all the surveillance footage in and all the wiretaps. So they had Louis Bronstein and they had James McAlevin. If that's how you say his name, sorry. So he had all these people that were helping out with the audio and the surveillance. Okay. Then we finally got to Pat Sanford. Pat Sanford was the one who actually was going through the recordings. So this is when, after the bump, right? This is where the first phone call that Charlie Adelson Donna Adelson made was to who? Charlie Adelson. Now, first they showed this. First they played a clip of Charlie Adelson and Donna Adelson talking about a certain guy, Dave, who they really wanted Wendi Adelson to date seriously or go out with, or I don't know, not break up with. So just showing how involved Donna Adelson and Charlie Adelson were in Wendi Adelson's love life. Okay, fine. So then moving on after that was where Charlie Adelson actually called Donna Adelson called Charlie Adelson, and then she said about this paperwork that she was giving, and it probably has to do with both of us. And the paperwork was just a clipping of Dan Markel's death with this conversation about you're not taking care of certain people, you're taking care of Katie McBanow, you're not taking care of Luis Rivera. And that is when Donna Adelson is saying that this probably has to do with both of us. You probably have a general idea of what I'm talking about. And she did not say a word about Dan Markel in the conversation. And of course, she did not also call the police. Then so they basically made up in that first phone call that they're going to meet tomorrow. Charlie Adelson was busy. Donna Adelson couldn't leave because she had the kids. And Wendi, they didn't want to bother Wendi about this. Wendi would try to figure out what's going on. Why are you leaving? So they didn't want to bother Wendi about this. So they made up to meet the next day. Well, Charlie Adelson couldn't contain his curiosity. So he kept calling back Donna Adelson and trying to talk through code and trying to ask questions when if he knew it was good for him, he would have just kept quiet and wait for tomorrow to meet with Donna Adelson. But he couldn't help himself. So he kept calling back Donna Adelson. And then at some point they're saying, okay, we're going to meet tomorrow. And that Donna Adelson suggested to Charlie that he should bring cash because he's going to take her out to dinner. Okay, so you're gonna come to Miami tomorrow. You're gonna take me out for dinner. This is Donna Adelson talking, and it's probably a good idea for you to bring cash, and because you're taking me out. I mean, is there any other way to pay without bringing $5,000 in cash? Is there any other way to pay? But that's what she told him, and she said, "Well, if you don't bring the cash, I'll bring the cash." All right, and then she said that I think she said that she has a pretty good idea about who sent the letter. And then Charlie Adelson asked her to take a picture of it and send it to him. And she said, no, it's not a good idea. We probably shouldn't be talking on the phone. And then he said something, well, maybe you should go to the police if people are threatening you. Maybe at that point he was getting a little bit nervous that maybe they are being recorded. So he said, yeah, well, maybe you should go to the police. And then he tried to use this. Also, this isn't about a Yelp review about being a bad dentist. Just because somebody tells you you're a bad dentist doesn't mean that you are a bad dentist. And that's where the suggestion was that they're probably not talking about a Yelp review. They're probably talking in code about something. And then she also said that we probably shouldn't talk on the phone. So this is all Donna Adelson talking about this. Then there's another call from Charlie Adelson to Donna Adelson, and where he says, don't talk about things in the apartment. And she says, obviously. And then she says, the TV was probably about 5. And it has to do with an ex-girlfriend of yours. So this is all being said on the phone. The TV is probably about 5. This is Donna Adelson's own words. And then there is another call The next call that they played today was Charlie Edelson to Katie McManua, trying to figure out what's going on. And Katie McManua was not his last girlfriend. And the girlfriend was not mentioned. The name of the girlfriend was not mentioned at all in the phone calls. Donna Adelson just said it has to do with an old girlfriend of yours. And Charlie Edelson immediately knew to call Katie McManua, even though that was not his most recent girlfriend. As Katie McManua said herself, you've got thousands of girlfriends. So, yeah. And then the next part that we ended off the day today was when the meeting actually happened with Donna Adelson and Charlie Edelson. So the meeting did happen, and that is where we are left today. So tomorrow, trial is going to begin at 8:45 a.m. So be here or be square bright and early, 8:45. We're going to be continuing to live stream the trial, and we will see you here, 8:45, bright and early. So thank you all. If you haven't yet, please subscribe. It's free, and like, and we will see you next time.